So now we're going to move into the second part of our agenda, work time A, the close reading. Our first thing that we need to really work on is this studying, right? We need to determine the central idea and figure it out before we can get to learning target 2, where we write a summary, okay? So this is our main target right now. What you should have in front of you is the Lost Girls of Sudan, the article, and then your close reading note catcher. Go ahead and put your name on both of those. This article, like I said, is going to help us answer our 2 guiding questions for the module. The first one being, who are the lost children and what is their story? And then the other one being, what are the habits of character the lost children use to survive? So I say that because as we're doing our close reading exercises of the day, I want you to make sure you're keeping those questions in the back of your mind, because I'm probably going to ask you to make some connections to those questions, okay? All right. So for our first read, I'm going to read through it. What should you be doing while I'm reading? Following along. Perfect. All right, everyone ready? Give me a thumbs up when you're ready to follow along with me. A couple more I'll wait for. Take your time. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Just before the entrance of the Kakuma refugee camp in the desert of northern Kenya, a pretty heavy read, right? Go ahead and turn and talk with your table. What is this text mostly about? What are some of your takeaways right now? Go.
So the text is mostly about like how the lost girls had got like sold off to rich people, and like they got sold off to rich people, and when they got sold off to rich people, like they didn't know what people was doing.
All right, let's bring it back together. Wow, I heard so many fabulous things as I walked around the room listening to your key takeaways and your gists. We're gonna, now that we kind of have the gist, I feel like every single table had it. Can somebody just summarize that for us? Go ahead, Kimani. Nice and loud.
It's about how the women were being treated like basically like they weren't human, like they were just there to like serve.
What women?
The women of Sudan.
Yeah, the women in Sudan, the lost girls, right? We talked about how they were the lost boys, and now we're learning about the lost girls, and they were very badly mistreated. And so to Riker's point, we are going to now dig in and do some close reading activities to really figure out what are the ways that the author helps to develop that central idea and other central ideas. Before we dive in, I do want to remind you of our Close Readers Do These Things anchor chart. Let's go ahead and just popcorn out I want 8 of you to just popcorn out. Each person does one, and then popcorn to another person. Remy, go ahead and get us started.
Read small chunks of the text and identify the gist.
Now, if we go to the second sentence, but across the barrier in the hot teeming warren of huts and dust roads, 17-year-old Grace Anayath has not seen much evidence of the slogan being put into practice. What is the author telling us about the lost girls here? Go ahead, Remy.
Like what the author is telling us is like, even though they're like in front of the refugees, there is a billboard that women's rights are human rights. They're not putting it into like action and not trying to do it for real because they just don't feel like women should have equal rights to men.
Exactly. So that is our very first central idea. So gotta let this catch up with me. There it goes. So in central idea number 1, we're gonna go ahead and add our first central idea, which is that the lost girls you can write this on yours. Human rights have been violated. now that we have our first central idea, the lost girls' human rights have been violated, we need to identify some supporting details. Riker, you got one for me already?
Yeah.
What you got?
I was going to use number 2 as one of my supporting details.
Okay.
I underlined, what's her name? Anayef has not seen much evidence of this slogan being used.
So yes, so that's where it tells us our central idea, right? So now we need to find details that support that Grace's human rights and the other lost girls' human rights have not been, that they have actually been violated. So I want to draw your attention to paragraphs 3, 4, and 5. I think this is really going to help you guys. Remember when we looked at the difference between literary and informational text? This is one of those examples of providing an example to support, right, the central idea. Take a moment to skim through paragraphs 3, 4, and 5. See if you can figure out what's the details that supports this. So this is where we have now determined one of the central ideas, right? We need one more. And we have also analyzed their development a little bit, right? There's still more that we can do with that. And so now I'm going to release you all. We're going to figure out what that second central idea is, and you're going to identify the supporting details with your groups to support that second central idea. Okay? Let's go ahead and take a look at the section titled New Start, okay? Take a moment to skim through that. Tell me if you can think about what is the other central idea in this text. Remy, you've already got it? Okay, I'm going to ask you to hold on to it. We want to give everybody some think time. I love that detail you use, Sophia, in your sentence. All right. Sophia, you had a really strong sentence for the second central idea. Would you mind reading that nice and loud for the class?
The boys were resettled in America, but when the girls wanted equal treatment, it was overlooked and thrown to the side.
Can you give snaps if you agree with that? Yeah, that was on every single one of you's papers, okay? So now we have determined our two central ideas. Give yourself a quick round of applause. We have ticked that off. Now we need to study it. How does the author bring this to life? I'm going to release you guys now to do this in table groups. There are at least 6 different details that support this central idea in the text. I'm going to give you guys about 4-ish minutes. See how many you can find in that time. All right, and add them to your note catcher. Any questions? What is your goal? Lily, go ahead.
To find 6 supporting details for the central idea.
And if you don't find all 6, what happens?
It's okay.
It's okay. Absolutely. Thank you, Lily. All right, go ahead. How much time do you have?
4 minutes.
4 minutes. Go. So that is the end of our 4 minutes. Who feels like they have the best detail to share to show us the development of the mistreatment of the lost girls versus the lost boys? Brooklyn, what you got?
On line 10, it says, but while many of the boys who became known as the Lost Boys were resettled in the United States, the girls' claim for equal treatment was overlooked.
Give a snap if you had that one too. Great. Who has another one? Go ahead, Evan.
The Sudanese people kept the lost girls out of the spotlight to keep them as an asset so they wouldn't get the help that they needed to, escape.
Who else had something similar to what Evan just shared? Give snaps. A few more. Okay. Is that Evan, what line did that come from?
That was on
What word did they use to describe the girls?
commodity.
Commodity. What does that mean? Does anybody know what the definition of a commodity is? Something that is like an asset that you can like trade for other things, okay? We're talking about humans, being used as an asset, right? So once again, we're brought back to this idea of slavery, right? Like being bought and sold as women. Okay. So now we have some of these details that help us develop, or helped the author develop, those two central ideas. So now you guys are going to flip to the next page in your note catcher, and you're going to see lines, right, for your summary. So this is where we've been practicing summaries a lot this year. So you guys know what it takes to write an effective summary. This is something you've seen over and over again. Those criteria at the bottom of your note catcher, so as you're writing, you can check off, right? You have little check boxes to make sure that you have all of the criteria for an effective summary. The main thing, I'm not going to belabor this whole thing, we've talked about it a lot. Make sure that it is clear and concise. You'll notice I didn't give you a whole page this time. I shortened that up because I wanted you to keep it short, sweet, and to the point. What was this article mostly about? What did you learn from it? And how do you know? What are the things that the author used to bring that story to life? And what is your, I've learned something today, your concluding statement, right? How do you wrap it up? Leave your reader really thinking about what you have to say. Okay, any questions before you guys get started? Who's I'm ready, let me go, let me do it. Lily's ready. Antoine's ready. Serenity, you ready? Yes, you are, you got it. All right, go ahead, pick up those pencils and get started. I'll be around to give you guys some feedback. So I'm gonna have you guys finish the rest of it for homework. Before we close down the summary though, I do wanna ask a couple of you to read those gist statements just so we can hear a couple of examples. Remy, I know you're still writing yours, but can you kind of give an example of what we talked about, of how you might start your summary?
So what I had said is, in the Lost Girls of Sudan by Isabel Madison, the author talks about how the girls had got lost and how the war started in southern Sudan.
Yes, beautiful. John, you want to add yours?
I said, in the Lost Girls of Sudan text by Isabel Madison, the text talks about the outcome of the girls after the end of the war in Sudan.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Christian.
I wrote down on how the text is focused on how there was a war in southern Sudan and how all the lost girls were sent to refugee camps.
Awesome. And so then from there, we'll then flow into what the lives of the lost girls were like, right? Then we get into those central ideas and those supporting details and concluding statement. So go ahead and you're going to flip now to the next page. And I want to take a moment. We're going to skip this. To look at our learning targets. We're going to do a quick fist to 5 so I can kind of get a sense who I need to check in with before releasing you guys for the homework. Where do you feel you are with these targets? How confident are you you're going to be able to get the summary done on your own? So 5, I'm good to go. 1, I have no idea. I need help immediately. Okay, great. I know my people. Thank you guys.